The first thing you'd lose in the ancient world wouldn't be electricity. It wouldn't be the internet. It wouldn't even be comfort. It would be privacy. Imagine waking up surrounded by your family, going to sleep beside the same people, eating, arguing, changing clothes, grieving, recovering from illness always within someone else's sight. We tend to believe that our ancestors fought only against hunger, cold, and predators. But there was another scarcity that shaped human life just as profoundly: the absence of being alone. Today, closing a door feels so ordinary that we rarely think about it. But for most of human history, a door didn't create privacy, because privacy has never depended on walls. It depends on space. For early humans, home was often nothing more than a cave, a hut, or a temporary shelter. At night, everyone gathered around the same fire. Parents, children, elders, relatives. They slept shoulder to shoulder beneath a single roof. The fire had to stay alive. Without it came cold. Without it came predators. But the fire also illuminated every movement, every whisper, every glance. There was almost nowhere to disappear. Not even your silence bellowing get entirely to you. As humans settled into farming communities, houses became larger. So did families. Generations often lived under the same roof, sharing rooms that served as kitchens, bedrooms, workshops, and storage spaces all at once. Furniture was scarce. Interior walls were rarer still. A hanging cloth might be the only thing separating one family's most intimate moments from another's. Modern people assume thick walls protect secrets. Ancient people understood something different. Privacy wasn't determined by architecture. It was determined by how many eyes shared the same room. In crowded households, everyone knew when you woke up. They knew when you argued with your spouse. They knew when your child lied. They knew when you cried. Secrets didn't stay secret for long. That changed human behavior in ways we still carry today. Ancient societies placed extraordinary value on reputation. And because reputation was constantly under surveillance. Your neighbors watched. Your relatives watched. Your entire community became an audience. Long before social media, human beings lived inside an invisible network of observation. Evolutionary psychology offers an explanation. Our brains evolved in small tribes where everyone depended on everyone else. Survival meant knowing who could be trusted, who shared food, who cheated, who kept promises, and who didn't. Watching others wasn't curiosity. It was survival, which is why shame feels so powerful. It isn't a flaw in human nature. It's an ancient alarm system. The moment we believe someone is watching us, our posture changes, our voice changes, our decisions change. Researchers have even found that a simple drawing of a pair of eyes can make people behave more honestly. Now imagine living in a world where the eyes were always real, where observation never switched off, where privacy was, and expected because it had never existed. Perhaps the most surprising part is that ancient people didn't necessarily suffer because of this. You can only miss something you've experienced. Most of them had never known true solitude, never known a room where nobody could interrupt. Never Now the feeling of closing a door and becoming invisible. To them, life inside the gaze of others wasn't abnormal. It was simply what being human meant, which raises an unsettling thought. Maybe privacy wasn't humanity's natural condition at all. Maybe it was one of civilization's greatest inventions. And like every invention, it would eventually change the way we understood ourselves. Humanity didn't invent privacy by building doors. We invented it by learning how to disappear. Look closely at ancient architecture, and a strange pattern begins to emerge. The most important spaces were almost never visible from the entrance. Whether it was a humble farmhouse or the residence of a wealthy noble, the design followed the same quiet philosophy. You stepped through a gate, only to face another courtyard, turn another corner, pass another threshold, and only then would the true living space reveal itself. The house itself was hiding, because the people inside had learned that survival sometimes meant remaining unseen. This transformation began when humans stopped wandering and started settling. For hunter-gatherers, the greatest threats came from nature. For farmers, they increasingly came from other people. Land could be inherited, grain could be stolen, property could accumulate, families became permanent, and suddenly, entirely new questions began to matter. Who was allowed into your home? Who knew where your valuables were kept? Who had seen your children? Who understood the rhythms of your household? Privacy was no longer just about comfort. It became a form of security. So houses evolved. Walls grew higher. Courtyards grew deeper. Windows became smaller. Entrances became more deliberate. Many ancient windows weren't designed to frame beautiful landscapes. They were designed to let in sunlight while revealing as little as possible to the outside world. Even the bed evolved. Across countless civilizations, beds were surrounded by curtains or canopies. During the day, they were ordinary furniture. At night, they became a room within a room. The thin fabric couldn't block sound, but it could block something even more powerful: the human gaze. Our brains are extraordinarily sensitive to being watched. The mere suspicion of observation changes how we breathe, move, and speak. Millions of years of evolution trained us to assume that eyes meant judgment, and judgment could determine survival. Privacy wasn't simply the absence of people. It was the temporary absence of their attention. Then humans discovered something even more fascinating. Space wasn't the only thing that could hide you. Time could do the same. Ancient life followed predictable rhythms. People woke together, worked together, cooked together, rested together, shared the same daylight, the same seasons, the same routines. So those who understood human behavior learned to exploit timing instead of distance. Important conversations happened before dawn. Sensitive decisions waited until long after sunset. Some people chose to travel during crowded festivals, when every eye was focused elsewhere. The cleverest people didn't merely hide behind walls. They disappeared inside distraction. Modern psychology recognizes this as one of the limitations of human attention. When everyone looks in one direction, something equally important can happen somewhere else, almost unnoticed. Ancient people never studied cognitive science. They didn't need to. They discovered its principles through experience. Markets, religious ceremonies, harvest festivals, wedding celebrations, places overflowing with noise became perfect places for quiet exchanges. Deals were made. Secrets were shared. Messages changed hands. Lives changed course. Not despite the crowd, but because of it. Privacy was never about isolation. It was about controlling what others noticed. Yet walls and timing could only accomplish so much. Because the people most capable of exposing your secrets weren't strangers standing outside your gate. They were the ones already inside. Your relatives, your neighbors, your closest friends. The people who had every reason to enter your life and every opportunity to carry your stories beyond it. And so humanity began constructing a different kind of barrier. One with no stone, no timber, no lock. A wall built entirely from custom, restraint, and silent agreement. Invisible, yet stronger than any fortress ever raised. The greatest protector of privacy was never a lock. It was the human mind. If you walked into an ancient village expecting to find every door heavily secured, you'd probably be disappointed. Many weren't. not because theft didn't exist, but because the first line of defense wasn't made of wood or iron. It lived inside the people themselves. For most of history, laws were too distant to govern everyday life. Customs did the job instead. They didn't need prisons. They didn't need judges standing on every street. They simply shaped what everyone believed was acceptable. Think about the rituals we rarely question. Why do we knock before entering? Why announce ourselves before stepping into someone's home? Why avoid reading another person's letters, opening their belongings, or exposing family matters in public? These seem like simple acts of politeness, but beneath them lies something much older. They are technologies of privacy. Long before privacy became a legal right, it was a social agreement. And surprisingly, it wasn't created to protect individual freedom. It evolved to preserve social stability. Imagine a village where every household knew every secret of every other household, who had hidden grain, who had fallen into debt, whose marriage was failing, who planned to divide an inheritance. Every piece of information could become conflict. Complete transparency sounds fair in theory. In reality, it often breeds suspicion, because the human brain isn't built to process information without emotion. We compare. We speculate. We exaggerate. Most importantly, we talk. Gossip is often dismissed as a trivial habit. Evolution tells a different story. Before writing, before newspapers, before history books, conversation was humanity's oldest information network. Who cheated during a hunt? Who abandoned the group? Who could be trusted? Sharing these stories wasn't entertainment. It was survival. Knowing another person's reputation could mean the difference between choosing a reliable ally or making a fatal mistake. That's why our fascination with other people's lives never disappeared. The environment changed. The ink didn't. The ancient survival tool gradually transformed into curiosity, then into entertainment, and sometimes into intrusion. The more naturally humans shared stories, the more valuable silence became. Across countless cultures, one unwritten rule appeared again and again. What happens inside the family stays inside the family. At first glance, that sounds like a concern for honor. But underneath, it was a strategy for controlling risk. The moment a private conflict escaped into public conversation, it no longer belonged to the people living it. It belonged to everyone. A secret loses its power the moment it becomes communal property. So ancient societies mastered an unexpected skill: selective silence. Some questions were never asked. Some truths were never spoken aloud. Some acts were acknowledged only through quiet understanding. To modern eyes, this can feel dishonest. Yet paradoxically, these shared silences often prevented unnecessary conflict. Civilization isn't built on saying everything we know. It's built on knowing what should remain unsaid. Perhaps that is the true beginning of maturity. Not the absence of secrets, but the wisdom to recognize which ones deserve protection. This reveals another misconception about the ancient world. People may not have possessed modern privacy rights, but they understood boundaries with remarkable sophistication. Some matters belonged to the village. Others belonged only to the household. Some could be shared with trusted friends. Others were carried to the grave. Every invisible boundary strengthened relationships. Every respected limit made cooperation possible. Shame, dignity, discretion. These weren't simply moral virtues. They were evolutionary tools that allowed large groups of strangers to live together without tearing themselves apart. In the end, the strongest walls were never built from stone. They were built from restraint. And for thousands of years, they held. until humanity entered an age where the greatest fear was no longer that someone might discover your secrets, but that no one might notice you at all. For thousands of years, humanity struggled to stay out of sight. Now, we struggle to be seen. That may be the greatest reversal in the history of privacy. Our ancestors built walls, raised gates, hung heavy curtains around their beds, created rituals, invented etiquette, all for a single purpose: to decide who was allowed into their world. Today, we often surrender that privilege with a single tap. We publish our breakfasts, our vacations, our relationships, our disappointments, sometimes even the moments that previous generations would have shared only with the people they trusted most. No one forces us to do it. We volunteer. At first glance, it feels like we've abandoned privacy altogether. But something deeper is happening. Human beings were never obsessed with secrecy. We were obsessed with control. There is a profound difference between being watched and choosing to be seen. When someone invades our privacy, we experience fear. When we decide to reveal something ourselves, we experience agency. The information may be identical. The psychology is completely different. Because privacy has never meant that nobody knows. It has always meant that you decide who gets to know. Modern psychology repeatedly points to the same conclusion. People become surprising. Why comfortable sharing personal details when they believe they control the audience? The moment that control disappears, anxiety takes its place. Our ancestors understood this instinctively. They weren't antisocial. Every evening, they gathered around the fire to tell stories. They celebrated festivals together, shared meals, exchanged news, laughed, mourned. They revealed themselves constantly, but always within boundaries they recognized, within circles they trusted, within relationships they could understand. Cross that invisible line, and something ancient awakens inside us. The same instinct that once protected a hunter sleeping beside a campfire still whispers inside the modern mind. The technology has changed. The brain has not. Look across the entire sweep of human history, and one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Every generation invented better tools for protecting privacy. Caves became houses. Houses became courtyards. Courtyards became private rooms. Wooden doors became iron locks. Iron locks became passwords. Passwords became invisible layers of encryption. The tools evolved. The need never did. Because every human being, no matter the century, needs one place where performance can finally end. A place where no reputation must be defended. No audience must be impressed. No role must be performed. A place where the nervous system can finally stop scanning for other people's eyes. Evolution shaped us to survive in groups. Civilization challenged us to survive as individuals. Real privacy isn't about isolation. It isn't about hiding from society. It's about creating a space where the self can exist without negotiation. And perhaps that's why trust is impossible without boundaries. If everything belongs to everyone, then nothing truly belongs to you. Without boundaries, there can be no security. Without security, there can be no vulnerability. And without vulnerability, there can be no genuine intimacy. So perhaps privacy was never merely a social convention. Perhaps it was one of civilization's most remarkable inventions. A quiet technology that allowed billions of strangers to coexist while preserving something deeply personal. Our ancestors spent thousands of years searching for places where they could disappear. Not because they wanted to escape humanity, but because they wanted to remain human. And now, standing in the most connected civilization our species has ever built, surrounded by more walls, more locks, and more security than any generation before us, we're left with a question that feels strangely ancient. Have we truly lost our privacy? Or have we slowly forgotten what it was for in the first place?